and welcome to day 4 out of 5 of our 5-day Course Builders Bootcamp training extravaganza. We are having a lot of fun this week. We're learning all about course building, and we're doing it in this really fun context where every day there's a new lesson, which means there isn't this urgency to cram everything into one webinar. There isn't this challenge of trying to extract from it as much as humanly possible. We're able to to go through a lot of stuff. There's time to think, there's time to reflect. I've been corresponding with a lot of you over your course ideas. I've been workshopping some of your work. So having lots of fun, really enjoying it. And today, day 4 out of 5, we are talking about course creation and delivery. I should remind everyone, because you know, but still I'll tell you anyway, this whole bootcamp is hosted by my good friend Greg Smith, CEO of Thinkific. Greg is not with us here today because he is on an airplane, and airplane Wi-Fi is super unreliable. I'm always amused when you see you try to get online and you get the little banner saying, this super fast Wi-Fi is brought to you by, American Express or whatever. And then you get online and you're like, if I was American Express, I wouldn't want people to know that. So it's super slow, not reliable enough for a webinar, and so Greg is going to be back with us tomorrow. Now, we're going to cover a lot of ground today, but comparatively speaking, today's session will be, I haven't delivered it yet, so I don't know, but it should be relatively short. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned earlier in the week, I'm trying to kind of alternate the pacing a little bit. So Monday was a very full day. We covered a lot of ground. Tuesday was a little shorter, so people had time to absorb, to process, to ask questions. Yesterday was, again, a much more full day. We were talking about marketing. Today will be a little shorter again, so there'll be some time to catch your breath, to process, to absorb, maybe a little more time to do the work that I would assign to you guys to do if you want to submit it and potentially be workshopped tomorrow. And then we'll be back tomorrow with a whole lot more to learn. So let's dive in. And we're going to we'll start with a quick review of what we've covered so far. So on Monday, we talked about prerequisites for success. We talked about the 4 mega trends of online courses. We talked about the things that you need in order to be successful, and they are encapsulated in these 4 different icons, analogs, examples. One is the wallet. You need a stable financial base from which to build your course. So at least know that your bills are covered for the next 6 months or so. You need the heart. That's about a commitment to really making a difference for the people you're going to serve, and a genuine belief in the value of premium education, that education is worth paying for. Because if you don't believe it, your students won't believe it. The wristwatch, which is about the commitment and urgency to get this done, to build and sell your course in the next 6 months. Otherwise, why would you be here? Why would you waste 7 hours of your week? And what the result of that is, which is a bias towards imperfect action, which many of you have already taken, posting your instant credibility formula on Facebook and adding it as a PS to your email signature, really getting things in motion, which is fantastic. And finally, the brain, which is about the knowledge, expertise, ability to help people and transform lives. So we talked about all that stuff on Monday. On Tuesday, we talked about topic research and validation. We talked about low-touch and high-touch research, which is about the different ways that you can reach out and learn from people. And we talked about how you really want to lean into high touch. But with that being said, the hard part is not gathering the research or finding a topic. The hard part is narrowing the scope to a minimum viable version of what you could teach. And we shared the 2-hour plane ride exercise, which is a great way of zeroing in on just what are you going to teach. We workshopped a bunch of examples. People saw even how that needs to be massaged and adjusted. Then yesterday, we talked about online course marketing. I shared with you 3 strategies that you should avoid. I told you that as beginning course builders, you should not be looking at value ladders or ads and funnels or content marketing. And then we talked about 4 enrollment strategies that lead to success in selling your pilot. And we talked about what drives the success of these campaigns and strategies, which is the narrative of co-creation, which is based on some really powerful research on behavioral science coming out of some top universities. The strategies that we talked about are the pre-sale email campaign, which is an email campaign to an audience that you have. We talked about enlisting partner support. We talked about the free coaching call strategy. A lot of people were very excited about that. And we talked about personal network outreach. And of course, we shared some cool details. There was the big reveal on the special offer with Mirasee and Thinkific that we're offering to bootcamp participants. And that is to join the Course Builders Laboratory and get a year of access to Thinkific Business and get the custom new technology that we've built just for bootcamp students. You literally can't get this anywhere else in the world. And anyone who's interested in that who has not already booked a call with a program specialist to see if it might be a good fit, go ahead and do that right now. You can go to cblab.bz/cbb. I'm actually going to type that into the chat for you guys. cblab.bz/cbb. There you go. So today we're going to talk about fulfillment. We're going to talk about the delivery of your course. But before we get into that, we're going to workshop some of the homework that you guys did yesterday. Now, you'll remember that the homework was to complete that offer of a free laser coaching call because that topic is the thing that holds it all together. So I would like to offer you a free 20-minute laser coaching call about fill in the blank. So what we're going to do now is workshop a whole bunch of people's responses to that. This is a short response, so we can go through a bunch and really help you guys narrow it in and get it right. So the first that we're going to look at is Russ. Russ's completion of that sentence, can I offer you a free 20-minute laser coaching call about, completes with firming up your plot line to successfully finish your novel. So I like that. I like that it clearly targets people who are already, successfully finishing implies they're already in process. So they're already in process or thinking about working on their novel. They already have a plot line. Presumably they have gaps in it. They feel challenged. The only question I would ask is, how aware are they that firming up their plot line is something they need? Because if they need it but it's not top of mind, they'll say, no, I think I'm fine. But if it's the burning desire, if they know it's what they need to accomplish, it's great. So you may or may not want to tweak this depending on your knowledge of the target person you want to reach. Second person is John. So he completes the sentence, can I offer you a free 20-minute laser coaching call about with how to create a venture as the primary game for the second half of your life, a venture that results in meaningful outcomes in the world while also generating ongoing income to pay your way in retirement. So I like this a lot. It's a bit long, but it's compelling. It's clear. The only thing that could be tweaked here, I think, is to more clearly tie it into their situation. Like this feels like a little bit borderline between you explaining a bunch of stuff to me, in which case I can say, well, just send me the PDF sort of thing, versus making it about what I am working on. So I would look at how to create a venture that is tailored to your background and abilities, and then continue as the primary game, et cetera, because that justifies the conversation. Third, we've got Doug. And he completes it with, can I offer you a free 20-minute laser coaching call about CETA? I promise not to try to sell you anything on the call. So presumably CETA is an acronym, and it's an acronym for something that the people he wants to reach know what it means and want it. If that's the case, great. If that's not the case, if they're not going to know what CETA is, then obviously you need to change it. And you also might want to change it from just CETA, whatever that is, to CETA for whatever accomplishing the outcome would be. So kind of borrowing from the instant credibility formula. So we've done 3 so far, and I want to just make sure we're pulling out the key insights, the key learnings here. What's really, really important is that it be specific, that it be clearly something that the person you want to reach already knows what it is and already knows they need it, they want it. What's also very important is that it be a topic that people know and believe they need a call to discuss. It's not just information they're going to receive. So we've got a bunch more. We're going to look next at Jim. Jim's outcome is about any difficulties you might be having in conversations with others. Are you interested? So I like this. I think it's valuable, but I also think it's too broad. This could be anything. This could be all over the place. And it kind of leaves people thinking, unless I just had a really bad interpersonal interaction with someone, I'm not sure where to go with this. So I would think about zeroing it in a little bit more, making it a little more clear, focused, and specific. Next we have Sarah. She's offering a free 20-minute laser coaching call about locating yourself on the fertility map and clarifying your decision-making. Again, presuming we're talking about people who are, I guess, trying to conceive, so this is very top of mind for them. I think locating yourself on the fertility map, I like that a lot because it implies a framework or a mental model that she has that they don't. So she has information that they need, and that says the call is going to be valuable. Clarifying your decision-making just sounds a little bit vague, so I would get a little more specific. So maybe something like to locate yourself on the fertility map and identify the best next steps towards conception for you, something like that. And next we've got Ian, who completes the sentence, can I offer you a free 20-minute laser coaching call about with how to manage capital and construction projects in a way that reliably guarantees a lower cost and faster project. So I'm not crazy about this one, not because the content isn't valuable, but for two reasons. One, this feels more like providing information than it does like coaching me or helping me figure something out. It's the kind of thing where I'd say just send me your white paper or just send me the PDF or share the information in an email. So it doesn't really feel like it justifies a call. It's a bit much to promise in a 15-minute call, in a 20-minute call. So I might want to narrow in the scope a little bit. Now we've got 3 more that we're going to do, and we're going to move on to the content of the day. Next up is Jane. She's offering a free 20-minute laser coaching call about how to build your naturopathic practice so it runs smoothly and you have a waiting list of patients who you really want to work with. I feel like this is a bit broad. It feels like it would be over-promising for what you can deliver in 20 minutes. So I would suggest maybe how to accomplish something specific in the practice, maybe finding and again, remember, it's got to feel customized to them and not just general information. So what if it was narrowed down to something like how to attract more clients to your naturopathic practice using the best low-hanging fruit for you in your practice, something to that effect, but wordsmithed a little better. Next is Ashley, whose 20-minute laser coaching call offer is about choosing a homeschool curriculum. I like it. It's clear, it's specific, it's focused. Anyone who is a parent homeschooling who has the need for that, will be interested, will say yes. The only question I would ask Ashley to think about is how top of mind is it for homeschooling parents that they need help choosing a curriculum? As long as they're aware of that, I think this is a good fit. And last but certainly not least, we have John, a different John, who's offering a free 20-minute laser coaching call about how to uncover and accumulate new validated truths each and every day to go ahead as a pioneer in whatever your field of research by intuition is. So, John, this sounds fascinating, and I don't think this will be very effective as an offer of a coaching call unless you're a celebrity. Right? If you're Tony Robbins, if you're Bill Clinton, if you're Oprah, then people will raise their hand because they believe you have a magical almost ability to unlock their potential. But barring that, I don't think this is going to work. The reason being it's super, super vague and unclear. It also sounds like it's more how-to than facilitative of a process for them, than customized to them. So how to uncover and accumulate new validated truths each and every day to go ahead as a pioneer in whatever your field of research, it's just super vague. I'd get just much more clear about how to find innovative solutions, lateral thinking, something like that. And again, in whatever your field of research by intuition is, just too vague. I'd get more specific about the mechanism and the outcome. So that's my feedback. We just kind of, machine gun through 9 different examples. I want to hear from everyone. Was that useful? And don't just say yes or no. If not, then I'm sorry. But if assuming it was useful, I want to hear what was useful about it. Right? What did you take away? What was the single takeaway for you? I'm going to take a sip of water while you guys are typing. Awesome. People are saying it was useful, and what was useful was examples of specificity, identifying what was vague about a statement, how to pinpoint the conversation topic, narrow down the topic, how to get more specific. Awesome. Well, I'm very, very glad to hear that. Fantastic. And today, we're going to move on. Today, what we're talking about is course creation and delivery. And in a lot of ways, this is like, this is where it all comes together, right? Everything we've talked about so far, having the prerequisites, then doing the research, then doing the marketing, it's all about getting people into a course so that you can then deliver that course, so they can actually go through the course, right? So what we're going to talk about today is the delivery. And I want to start by talking about your mindset around preparation, because developing your course for the first time, your natural instinct will be to be prepared. You're going to want to have detailed outlines and scripts and slides and videos and worksheets and everything ready as much as possible in advance. Now, usually I tell people to trust their instincts, but this is one of those cases where that is actually not good advice. You don't want to trust your instincts about how prepared you need to be to deliver that course in advance. And it's not that I want you to be unprepared, because of course I don't want that, but rather that most of the preparation work that you would do will likely be wasted. And the reason for that is, in the words of Steve Blank, who anyone in Silicon Valley knows who he is, no business plan survives first contact with customers. And the course building corollary is that no curriculum plan survives first contact with your students. That's really what it comes down to. And it's not just that it's going to adapt, but the more detail you have in your outline and your scripts, the harder it becomes to adapt because you feel locked in, right? If you have a script for every lesson you're going to deliver, if you've got 200 slides ready for every lesson you're going to deliver, then you're going to feel like you have to follow that script. And when your students become confused or challenged, it's much harder, just emotionally, it's harder to toss out all those scripts and all those slides and go with them from where they're at. So what you really want to do is have a high-level outline that you can plan on developing, fleshing out, and then delivering live, more or less in real time, on the fly, week to week, lesson to lesson. And this is the kind of thing that a lot of people hear this and kind of freaks them out, but it's always what ends up happening anyway. I'll share with you an example of a client of mine. It's a private client. She runs a very successful business, and I worked with her to launch a pilot. And she launched a pilot on a certain topic. And she did pretty well. I think it brought in $30,000 or $40,000, got in a whole bunch of students, and she wanted to be very prepared. She was like, I'm a professional, I have a reputation, I have to be prepared. So she created a detailed lesson outline for one lesson per week for 5 weeks, so 5 detailed lesson scripts. And she delivered the first script. And the feedback from the students, even though I told her not to flesh them all out like that, but she did. The feedback from the students was, this was amazing, it was so great, it was so in-depth that we're so completely overwhelmed that we're totally lost and we're freaking out. People were just completely overwhelmed. And so what she ended up having to do was throw out the remaining 4 scripts, the remaining 4 outlines, take that one, break it into 4 pieces, and that first lesson she outlined ended up becoming her entire pilot course. This is a common occurrence when I see people developing pilots because A, there's the curse of knowledge. You don't realize how hard it is for people to get their heads around the stuff you're talking about. We'll talk about more around why that is in a moment. But B, you don't have experience teaching this content online in this way before, even if you are an expert in your subject matter. So you can't know how people will absorb it. So really the best preparation for you to deliver your pilot is a short bullet list outline for each lesson, typically half a page long. So every lesson gets the title of the lesson and then a handful of bullets of what goes inside. So here's how you outline your entire course. You start with just your course, right? You have the name of your course. You say, I'm going to have this many lessons inside. The course itself is oriented towards the big outcome that you're promising. Then for the lessons, you're going to go one by one, just listing at a high level what each one is, and what you're doing is describing steps to the outcome, working backwards from the end. In other words, to achieve this outcome, they first need to know this, and before that they need to know this, and before that they need to know that other thing. So you're working through the steps one by one. And then you go a level of detail deeper to look at each lesson. And each lesson is going to have a number of sub-items, a number of bullets, with the lesson being about the big objective for that lesson. And then what you're doing with the sub-items is the building blocks. What is the stuff I'm going to teach? And this sounds like it's not a lot of preparation, and it's actually not true if you look at it from a certain lens. Because remember what we talked about on day one. You legitimately need to have expertise in your subject matter. You legitimately need to know your stuff. So it's not that you don't need to put in time to be prepared to teach, but you've been putting in that time for the last years, if not decades. And so being able to sit down and just explain a number of things from an outline should not be that hard if you have that level of expertise. That's really the core requirement. So I do want to keep this simple, but I want to go a little deeper into just understanding why you need to keep it relatively chunked down and what you need to keep in mind as you're designing your curriculum, as you're thinking through what I'm going to teach and when. And this is about the 2 layers of learning. There are 2 layers of learning, layers of going from I don't know anything to I'm super fluent and excellent in it. The first level is literacy. Literacy is about going from I don't know what you're talking about to yes, I do know what you're talking about. Right? So if you've never ever heard of the term a landing page before, and then I explain a landing page is the web page that people land on when they first come to visit your site, and what you want to have on it is something that's attractive and compelling so they can give you their name and email address and begin a relationship, boom, now you have a literacy, right? You know what I'm talking about, but that doesn't mean you can do it yourself. That's the first layer of learning. The second layer of learning is fluency. That's about going from not just I know what you're talking about, but I don't just understand it, I can do it. And that's the second stage. Now, the thing about learning is that it's very, very hard to go from 0 to the top of fluency in one shot, right? Fluency builds on literacy with deeper thinking, understanding, processing of concepts, and experimentation in real life. Literacy takes an explanation. And hence the lie of just about every webinar you've ever attended. How many times have you heard someone say, I will teach you cutting-edge strategies that you've never heard of before, and I will teach you strategies that you can apply immediately to get results. You can't have both of those things at once, because if something is brand new and you've never heard it before, you're not going to master it because of a 10-minute explanation. Right? And that doesn't mean you can't learn new things you can implement, but they're typically going to be small and focused. So you've got to balance teaching people things, letting them absorb the ideas, assimilate them, and then move on to the point where they can actually start practicing, where you're giving them homework in order to go do the work, come back, and have internalized some ideas. So with that being said, just as context, there are 3 big things to talk about when it comes to putting your content together. The first is the delivery. Lots of people ask, well, how do I actually deliver the course? The answer is that as much as possible, and for all the things I'm going to talk about now, by the way, I can only go to a certain level of detail because each course is about different subject matter and for different students. So this is the kind of place where you really do need to lean on a coach to help you figure out what to do that will be right for your students, which is what happens through our programs. But at a high level, when it comes to delivery, you want to lean towards delivering your pilot live. Live meaning, in a perfect world in the same room, but that's usually not practical. Live usually meaning on a webinar context like this, ideally a video conferencing kind of setup like on Zoom. And the reason I really like video conferencing for delivering pilots is I want to be able to see people's faces, because if you're delivering content in a class in real time, if people are confused, you see it on their faces right away. You don't have to wait till the next week when they do or don't submit their homework or ask questions. So if possible, deliver it live, have your outlines, and just show up and do it. It might be a little bit nerve-wracking, but you'll get through it. People will have a good experience because all of that is being informed by your years, if not decades of experience. And then you're going to use the experience of how it went to refine your curriculum as you make it better and turn it into a full course. So that's the delivery. The next thing I want to talk about is engagement, right? It's one thing to deliver content. It's another thing for people to be present and participating and consume that content. And I want to bring this up here. We're actually going to talk about this mostly tomorrow. Tomorrow's session is all about engagement, which is a big part of scaling up what you're looking to create. Excuse me. But one of the things that's very important to cover and think about is small wins. Engagement is driven by small wins. So as people work through your program, you've got the big win, which is whatever the outcome of the pilot course is. What you want to do is break that into smaller wins. What is the win? What are the multiple wins that you can deliver to people with each and every lesson and even each and every step in a lesson? Small wins are very important because they develop a muscle memory, a habit of being successful and moving forward in the course. And especially if you front load those small wins, it means that when people do hit a roadblock later on, they're going to be better equipped to adapt to it. So Janet asked for an example of a small win. So a small win that I gave you guys on day 1 of this session was the instant credibility formula. Right? It's simple, it's easy, and you're like, wow, I've learned something and it worked for me. And then a lot of people had another small win when they posted it on Facebook, and they actually had outside validation that, yes, this is what I want. It's compelling, awesome. So those were quick small wins that people got right at the start of this boot camp. Now, does getting your instant credibility formula right mean that you know everything you need to know to build and sell your course? Of course not. There's, multiple days remaining of the boot camp after that. There's our course, there's our training, there's a lot more that goes into it. But you felt early that, hey, this is working. This is worth investing my time and energy in moving forward. That's really, really important. Now, in terms of technology, what do you need? Well, there's one very short and simple answer to that, and that is Thinkific, right? Thinkific, there are many platforms you can use. Thinkific is fantastic. And what it does is put under one roof all of the core functions that you need for delivering your pilot. You can even do live webinars and live trainings like I just described, and it can also keep and host everything after the fact so your students can come and look at it later. It'll also take care of the notifications of your students. It'll take care of the transaction processing. So it's kind of this all-in-one shop. And the reality is that your needs are not that complex for your pilot. What you just need is something that works and does everything so you can move forward. Now, there's one thing that we haven't touched on, which is very, very important, especially in the context of a pilot, and that is support. Your students are going to need support. That's just, the nature of the game in any course. People are going to have questions. People are going to get stuck. People are going to need help. But in a pilot, much more so. It's much more common in a pilot, and the reason for that is that a pilot is rough around the edges. A pilot is your first attempt at doing something. You don't have it polished and honed yet. And so that means people are going to have more trouble than they are eventually in the course. So when you think about the support you want to offer, you want to keep in mind, and most people think about this the wrong way, you want to keep in mind that there are 3 groups of students that you should be thinking about. And they plot out on a bell curve. I'm sure most of you have seen this graph before. It's a bell curve. It's not to scale, but each of these grid areas is one standard deviation. So there are 3 groups of students that every course is going to work with. There are the students that are going to be successful no matter what. In other words, it doesn't matter how bad your course is, there's a limited number of students who are just, they're always going to be successful. They have the right combination of drive, motivation, background knowledge, context, circumstance, resources. They're going to be successful. And that's great. These are the students that make our hearts sing as course creators. They're the ones who make for great case studies and testimonials. Awesome. But they're a minority. They're just over 2% of the population. Then there's also the students who will be unsuccessful no matter what. It doesn't matter how good your course is. It doesn't matter how much support you offer. You could get on an airplane, fly to their house, hold their hand and do the work for them, and they will still never be successful for a combination of, context, circumstance, bad luck, head trash that gets in the way. It's just there's nothing you can do for these students. And it's incredibly frustrating for course creators who actually care about their students being successful. They're also a minority, thankfully. But then there's a third group, and that's everyone in between. That's the vast majority of your students. Think 95% of your students are everyone in the middle. These are the people who are smart and hardworking and motivated and want to be successful, and they signed up because they care about the outcome that you're promising. But, you know, they get busy. They get confused. They get overwhelmed. Life gets in the way, and they need your help to be successful. Now, the big mistake that most online course creators make is that they design the support they're offering for the outliers, for the ones who are going to be successful no matter what. It's like, you know, well, I'll do a group coaching call once a week with 400 people, and that'll be enough. And, you know, it is enough for the 2% who are going to be successful no matter what. It's not enough for most people. So you want to think about what is the level of support that most real people will need. And, you know, how much support are these students likely to actually need? And what you want to do is err towards more rather than less. You can always offer more support and end up not having to deliver it because they just don't need it. If you offer less support and students are unsuccessful, that's where you have a problem. And of course, the amount of support that you offer affects the pricing that you're going to charge. You know, we just had a great question in the chat. Lauren asked, how should I price my pilot? So I'll tell you how to think about it. You want to start by thinking about the course that you ultimately want to create. How much do you ultimately want to charge for that? You don't need a precise number, just a ballpark. Let's call it $1,000 sake of argument. And that's a function of value, market comparables, etc. Let's call it $1,000. Then what you're going to do is pull on two levers to arrive at the pilot price. The first lever is, relatively speaking, how complete and thorough is the pilot. So if the pilot is only 20% as complete and thorough and polished as the eventual course will be, you know, you drop that down from $1,000 to $200. And that's why people tend to think of pilots being inexpensive, less expensive than full courses. But there's a second lever that they forget, which is the degree of support and access to you. And typically a pilot will involve more support. A pilot will involve a lot more access to you, which may not be easily purchasable elsewhere. And that increases the value substantially. So maybe you're going to offer 10 times the amount of access and support. That increases the price by 10 times. And so it's not uncommon for a pilot to actually cost more than a full course. I'll give you actually a real-world example. We're getting ready to roll out a pilot of a new program in just a few weeks. Like, you know, you're on my mailing list. You'll hear about this in the next couple of weeks. And this is a program that, you know, eventually we're going to turn it into a full course at some point down the line, you know, late 2018 or something. But for the pilot, it's not going to be videos on a screen. You're not going to be working with one of the coaches on my team. It's going to be me delivering it live, coaching people individually, working with a small group. And so even though it's going to be rougher around the edges, the price is actually going to be substantially higher because they're getting that access to me that otherwise would cost a lot of money and may not even be available. So you want to think about what is the support that you need to make sure everyone will be successful and to get all the feedback. It's a feedback channel, and include that support. And, you know, this is the part where you really want to do things that don't scale. This is something that comes out of the Silicon Valley world, this idea that, you know, we're all chasing after scalability. We want something that, you know, we can add 100 new students and it doesn't take any extra work. And ultimately, you want to build your course to be scalable. But the key to doing that is to do the things that don't scale now, to learn from the process of delivering your pilot what is working and what is not, how you need to tweak, how you need to change it, how you need to fix it in order to make things better. Okay, working harder now at the pilot stage means easier and faster growth later on. Now, I want to do something a little different. You know, whenever you're doing public speaking or teaching, there's a challenge that if students hear from you for more than a certain length of time, it all starts sounding the same. It becomes like Charlie Brown's professor talking, right? Just because, you know, you've been hearing me for 4 days. And so I wanted to give you a different perspective, a different voice, a different angle to hear about the creation and delivery of your pilot courses. And so on the line with me is Lizzie Merritt. Lizzie Merritt is our Director of Education at Mirasee. She's our lead coach. She runs our coaching team. She's worked with hundreds of pilot students through the Course Builders Laboratory. And Lizzie has actually been doing some research for a presentation on what goes into designing a really good and effective curriculum. So Lizzie, do you want to share with our community, with our students right now, with the people who are on the line, your thoughts on that?
Sure, Danny, thank you for inviting me to join you today. I am thrilled and honored to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. So there's so many things to think about when we're talking about the design and fulfillment of your course. And just a little bit of background on me is I came to Mirasee as an experienced teacher. I taught in the schools for several years. I also taught as a fitness instructor. So when I came to Mirasee as the role of a coach, I thought, you know, I know how to do this. And let me tell you that working with Mirasee has been an education in itself in terms of how to deliver content and curriculum in an online format. There's a lot to learn. And so first I want to just say everything I'm about to say, when you're doing your pilot, go for simplicity. You can make it as complicated or as simple as you want, but go for simplicity. So I'm going to cover a lot of ground, but if you start to feel like, whoa, I didn't catch that, or this is overwhelming, don't worry, you can always keep it simple for your pilot. So first, let's talk about the design of your actual lessons. Most of us teach in the way that we were taught. And hopefully you had amazing teachers as you were growing up, and I had some amazing ones and some less amazing ones, but for the most part, I sat at my desk and I was spoken at or spoken to for 30, 40, 45 minutes, and then I got up and left the room. And so it's natural for me to teach in that manner, that I stand up and lecture for 40 minutes and say, okay, you got it? Great, here's your homework. And that is not the way in which, certainly the way in which children learn, and it's not the way adults learn either. I'm sure we're all aware that attention spans grow shorter by the second with all of our technology. And so good practice to keep in mind is that you want to switch up your modality around every 5 to 7 minutes. So what is modality? Modality is the way in which you're delivering your information. So let's say you're in a live setting. You're on a Zoom call, a Skype call, something like that. You can talk for a few minutes. Once you're getting close to that 5 to 7 minute mark, you want to switch to something else. So that can be, okay, we're going to stop for questions. Bill, do you have a question? Bill, what's going on? How about Susie? What do you think of what we just talked about? Can you get some of your participants to talk to each other and engage? That would be one way to switch up your modality. Another way could go from, let's say you were sharing slides, you could stop sharing and show everyone's faces again. Or you could play a short 30-second movie. I'm sure anyone who has children knows that if the TV is on, we are absolutely zoned in to whatever is playing. And it is like human nature. If there's a movie playing, we watch it. So switching your modality from a lecture mode to a quick video is a way to grasp people's attention and bring them back to focus, because it's very easy, especially in a virtual setting, for your listeners to tune out. And unfortunately, when they do that, they won't get the transformation that you promised them because they're not mentally focused. So first, kind of item number one is try and switch up your modality every 5 to 7 minutes. If you are not using a live setting, if you have pre-recorded videos, you also want to keep these shorter. So the days of the 30-minute video have passed. If you're going to put together pre-recorded videos, try and keep them under 10 minutes. Between 5 and 10 minutes is great. And same thing with your videos. You want to switch up the modalities. So if you're sharing your screen the entire time on your video, make sure you also show your face a little bit. Smile. People identify with people, not PowerPoints. So if you have a pre-recorded video, it is a good idea to show your face and smile and be energetic and be warm and show your personality, because people will fall in love with your personality. All right, so a couple other ideas. When you are putting your course together, there's more than just the lessons that you're going to create. You also need to think about the journey or the process that your student will go through as they go from a potential student to now they've just bought your product to now they're in your course. So, for example, some of our courses have an application. You have to apply in order to be accepted into the course. That's something to ask yourself. Do you want to have an application for your course? And if so, what are you screening for? What's the outcome? Who is your ideal student? And what kinds of questions would filter in a way that you could see their answers in a way that helps you say, this is the perfect student to work with me. Also, how would you deliver your application to them? Would it be an email format? Would it be in a survey? SurveyMonkey is a fantastic platform that you can use. There are more sophisticated platforms that can also be used as well. Don't want to get too deep into the tech right now, just because I don't want to overcomplicate things. But that is something to consider. Do you want an application? Generally speaking, for a pilot, most people do not have applications. But you still need to take your student by the hand and help them along the journey from possible student to here's my money to now you're in the class. So for example, let's say they have hit the buy now button, they've inputted their credit card, and they click pay now. Then what happens? Is there a welcome page? Is there a thank you page? Do they get sent an email right away? So these are things that Thinkific can do automatically. But you also want to think through what kinds of words do I want on that thank you page. This is a great opportunity for you to show your personality. Again, people will fall in love with who you are because there's only one you. And be yourself on the thank you page. Speak in first person because, again, people identify with other individuals rather than third-party businesses. So once they receive the thank you page, they probably have an email. So in that email, what's it going to say? Are they signing up for a course that is delivered via Thinkific? In which case, how are they going to get their username and their password? These are just kind of little steps to think through. If you're having a really low-key pilot and you're just going to meet on Zoom, then you need to send them an email letting them know what to expect.